let's
move on.
Take our, ships and transportation and go back to find ourselves in United Kingdom again with a company called Conidia Bioscience. And Conidia Bioscience comes with a digital platform, FUELSTAT Result, to record the results in the field digitally. FUELSTAT is an immunoassay antibody fuel test kit for microbial detection. It can be used wherever fuel is manufactured, stored, transferred, or used at all. With FUELSTAT, tests take as little as 15 minutes. With easy-to-understand alert levels, you instantly know whether you need to take further action or it's all fine. So, guys, here today we have Pierre Poitras and David Armitage with us from United Kingdom, and they're joining us right now. So hopefully we will hear a pretty interesting presentation and a new point of view as well.
Exactly. We had some time ago, a couple of days ago, we had a test call with these two guys. These are really charismatic professionals that will let you know about Conidia Bioscience plans, FUELSTAT, and possible results. That should be really, really interesting for some companies among our attendees. So right now, we're looking forward to see Mr. Pierre and David joining the conference right now.
Hello and welcome. I am David Armitage, and once I get the video, you'll be able to see my beautiful face. But I'm here from the UK, and as you already know, Pierre is joining me from Canada, but in today's world, that's just the way that we work these days. With this in mind, and before I move on, may I take the opportunity on behalf of us all here at Conidia Bioscience to wish you, your families, and fellow colleagues the best of health during these difficult times. Like the classic film Forrest Gump, we're actually going to give you the end before we give you the story of how we get there. And whilst our area of expertise is probably not the most glamorous, it is one that actually can be very damaging. But it can be managed, as also shown by the previous exhibitor. Whilst our technical teams specialize in fuel microbiology and have spent years studying the topic, luckily for you, this is not a fuel microbiology class, and you will only have to endure a few minutes of the basics and most critical elements. The solution to the problem is a product called FUELSTAT, which provides the ability for you to take control, make swift and dynamic decisions, whilst removing most of the complexity required for samples to be tested for microbiological contamination. A test that can be conducted quickly from start to finish, and in current COVID conditions by one single person, within minutes on land or at sea. One which requires no capital equipment, contains no hazardous material, and its components are recyclable. Unfortunately though, they are not reusable. A bit like marine navigation systems, we've taken the complex bits and we've packaged them into one simple to use device, which for the purposes of reporting and auditing can be read by a free smartphone app. So operators, fleet managers, fuel suppliers, or any other stakeholders can have a report from an asset anywhere in the world, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, whatever the weather. For comfort, the test is also compliant to an internationally recognized standard, ASTM D8070. But why is it important? One of the biggest issues actually regarding microbiological testing is that time really does matter. Unlike other common components related to fuel testing, such as water content, sulfur content, flash point, and so on, which will not actually change much, excuse me, in a sample, these organisms will, and indeed will do so very quickly. ASTM D6469, as shown on the screen, highlights the problem, but it's not actually very well known in most industries, and actually not very well highlighted by providers either, but is crucial in ensuring the most representative result possible. is it actually feasible to get a fuel sample transported on ice to a lab within 4 hours and tested within 24? It's difficult on land in many cases, let alone at sea. If it is not possible and the organisms could die, the likelihood of getting a representative result dies too. And potentially, you could be given the green light that everything is okay, when in fact, there could be a problem. Traditional testing also takes several days. So in the unlikely event of a sample being transported and testing within the time frame, it will still take a couple of days to get the result anyway. Vessels aren't ordinarily in port for days at a time. So in the event of a problem, what do you do now? In a cost-effective manner in international waters. Hope for the best. It's fair to say that the marine industry has had its fair share of choppy waters, and another problem is not very desirable right now. There has been the impact of COVID on maritime trade and the decimation of the cruise industry, which actually in both cases has led to reductions in vessel utilization, but unfortunately the continued costs associated with keeping the vessels seaworthy. The knock-on effect of increased long-term fuel storage within the complex global fuel supply network, which could actually present further issues if this issue is not managed in the interim, when we actually finally come out the other side of this global pandemic. Couple this with the introduction of IMO 2020 and the global increased demand for biofuels, the marine industry really does have a lot on its plate. Pierre will now take you through a few minutes of the technical and fuel-related aspects.
Yes, thank you very much, David. Can you all hear me? Yes? Hello? Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's all good.
Okay, thank you very much. So as alluded by David and the previous speakers, recent environmental regulations targeting the marine industry has introduced change in fuel composition. Sulfur reduction has forced fuel suppliers to consider new blending components for distillate and residual fuels. These include first-generation biofuel, such as biodiesel that contains FAME, fatty acid methyl esters, and more recently, second-generation sustainable biofuels. As we introduce these new fuel blending components, we must ensure to minimize their negative impact on operations in regards to fuel stability, fuel compatibility, performance at low temperature. Since some new components, such as FAME, has greater affinity to moisture and can introduce greater water content in shipborne equipment, one should be mindful in not creating the perfect environment for microbiological growth. Next, please, David. So here are a few examples of fuel samples displaying two layers, the top layer being the fuel and the bottom layer being water. And we can see that at the fuel-water interface, microbiological growth, a biofilm being grown. And this is due to the presence of water that provides the nutrient and the oxygens for bacterial, fungi, and yeast to grow in fuel. Next, please. In extreme cases, biofilm will generate biomasses that will affect shipborne equipment. In these situations, we can observe filter blocking, injector fouling, impacting the engine performance, which is not uncommon in these situations. And this is what we want to avoid. Next, please. So this is an extreme case to a point where it may destroy a turbine engine and cause pitting corrosion in fuel tank. So these situations are totally unacceptable, and we need to manage the water content and the fuel quality in order to ensure that these situations does not occur. So I will leave it to David now to explain the offer and the way of assessing the possible presence of microbiological growth. Back to you, David.
Thanks, Pierre. Okay, so you've now had the scary bits, but rest assured, there is an easy, efficient, and cost-effective way of managing this scenario whilst putting you back in control. FUELSTAT, as part of a holistic fuel management solution, will enable swift decision-making for the most effective and efficient ways to protect assets from the issues microbiological growth can cause. It's so simple, even I can do it. And if you could actually see me on screen, you'd understand that that's no mean feat. Simply prepare a fuel sample as clearly laid out in the instructions provided with each test kit, or indicated on our training videos if you want a more interactive experience. Place 4 drops into 6 wells, grab a cup of tea and put your feet up while you wait 15 minutes. Scan the test using the free FUELSTAT result app, and simply store the report for traceability, auditing, and trend analysis purposes. This offer can be done all within a matter of minutes, not days. It can be conducted by one person with instructions in 11 different languages and removing many of the complexities associated with microbiological testing, which we've already alluded to, but also a test which is internationally recognized or internationally recognizable ASTM process and already carries a global part number for one major OEM. Here are a few quick examples of how FUELSTAT could provide value. You could test before entering ports. If contamination is detected, you could call ahead and the remedial requirements could be waiting dockside and implemented during a vessel's turnaround time. It's also fair to say that fuel varies around the world owing to the globe's complex fuel supply network, varying fuel grades, and many other factors. These organisms occur naturally and unknowingly can be transferred through the supply chain. Even perfectly on-spec fuel can contain traces of microorganisms. So whilst refusing a payload may be troublesome or even impractical, having the ability to take precautions could be invaluable. Therefore, testing as part of a holistic fuel management strategy is vital. And of course, we naturally hope you choose FUELSTAT for the testing element. Here are just a few examples of entities using FUELSTAT for the rapid detection of microbiological contamination. And be assured, you're not alone on your journey, and we are on hand to help with any queries concerning microbiological contamination and the FUELSTAT product. So please do not hesitate to reach out for any assistance you may require. Remember, the risk may be increasing, but the quicker you detect it and treat it, the less problems it will cause. The marine industry has had more than its fair share of concerns. Microbiological contamination does not need to be another one. Thank you for listening and stay safe.
So guys, thanks a lot for the presentation, Pierre, David. It was nice to hear about FUELSTAT, and to all our viewers, please use the occasion and take a screenshot, info@conidia.com, so you can reach actually one of the members of the company and get more information about this. By the way, actually talking about the presentation itself, it was informative and actually interesting. So if you guys are ready, we have, I can see that from the audience, we have a question for you.
Can you hear us?
Fire away.
You can hear us, right? Okay. So how often fuel testing should be carried out on a vessel?
From a commercial perspective or a technical perspective? Commercially, every day.
From both of them. perspectives.
No, really, technically speaking, it becomes a fuel management matter. And basically what we advocate is basically to do some trend monitoring of your fuel quality. So basically evaluating the fuel quality over time. So you should institute a frequency of testing that basically provides you meaningful data over time, and you can trend this so that basically you can understand whether or not there's increased water content in your fuel and potentially microbiological growth. So not just to rely on one test at one particular time, but basically set a frequency of testing based on your operation and trend this over time is the best approach.
I also think from a commercial perspective, it's a little bit of it's a flexible scenario. So vessels can, or the marine industry can test various different components. So if you take a cruise ship, for instance, they could test the generators, they could test the engine, they could test the fuel tanks. There's a number of things that could be done. But I think creating a baseline is the right thing to do. So if you were to start a testing program, traditionally what the opinion would be is that you would do it on a quarterly basis to start with. Once you have a baseline, then you can flex that out depending on the circumstances that you're in. So if it's clean, it can go to maybe 6 months. If there is a problem arising, you can pull it back. It's a very flexible scenario.
Okay, so if anyone have some mentioned problems, issues, or something like this, guys, please contact David or Pierre to get more information. Like I mentioned before, I guess the ideal scenario would be you can contact Pierre regarding actually the technical details, and David could take care of how to get it. Talking about FUELSTAT. So guys, it was really nice to have you here. It was an interesting presentation. Regarding further questions, if there will be any, they will be delivered to you, and your presentation, your contact details and information about FUELSTAT and Conidia Bioscience will be delivered to all event attendees. So thanks a lot for your participation and being here with us today.
Thank you very much and have a great conference.
Thank you, everyone, and stay safe.